everyone, thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. For those of you who are new here, my name is Ashley and I'm an apprentice perfumer. I love talking about fragrances, whether that be the more technical aspect of them or a fragrance review. So if that's something that interests you, consider subscribing to the channel. In this video, we're going to be talking all about layers, and layering is one of my absolute favorite things to do. I know sometimes it gets a bad rap. People say, oh, you know, if the perfumer intended the fragrance to be layered, these ingredients, raw materials would already be in it, but perfumers already make a complete fragrance and therefore you can't layer them. Frankly, I don't know if that's true, because I layer complete fragrances all the time, all kinds of different fragrances, even fragrances that are considered to be masterpieces. Even if a fragrance is a big love of mine, I still think it's really fun to layer. And one of the reasons for that is, even if you have a big collection, you know, sometimes you're just not in the mood to go out and buy a new perfume, and that's when layering can come into handy. Maybe there's a fragrance in your collection that doesn't get a lot of wear, and this can be a way to kind of incorporate it back into your rotation. And lastly, I love the idea that the fact of layering lets the customer be creative. It lets you customize a fragrance to yourself. It lets you play, it lets you experiment. And so I think there's a lot of benefits that come from layering, and I have discovered some incredible layers. And honestly, when I wear fragrance, it is more often than not layered with another one. So I'm gonna walk you guys through my process on how to layer, because I think it can be something that's a little bit intimidating, just because it seems like there's so many ways to get it wrong and so few ways to get it right. And I think it's actually quite the opposite. And it's also a skill that you can build up. I find I have gotten better and better at layering with time, where now when I choose two fragrances, they almost always layer to get like really well together. So I definitely think it's something where even if you feel like your layering skills aren't great right now, we're gonna help build them up with this video. Something that I personally do is I like to choose fragrances of the same concentration. I didn't always do this, but again, while trying different layers, I realized that if I paired a wallflower, kind of weaker fragrance with even a moderate and definitely not a beast mode fragrance, the wallflower fragrance would get boosted into life for a little bit, which was really heartening to me, because at first I was doing this to give certain fragrances life. What I later realized is that it wasn't giving these fragrances life. What it was actually doing is it was giving them a little boost for maybe 5 minutes, and then the bigger fragrance would overtake, and it was just adding a lot of kind of like mush, like unnecessary notes to the bigger fragrance. So while it was kind of exciting to have this like not very long lasting fragrance get a little boost, ultimately it didn't make for a good layer. So I think it's very important to put fragrances of similar concentrations together. Now, two weaker fragrances will work really well because they're on that same wavelength and you'll still see both of their characters and how they interact. But I definitely wouldn't just recommend this for weak to moderate fragrance. In fact, I've had some of my most success layering with massive beast mode fragrances. So I actually suggest starting there. One of my favorite fragrance layers was actually a recommendation that I got from someone on Instagram, and it was a mixture of Oud Satin Mood and Baccarat Rouge 540. And when he left this comment, he was like, "Thank me later." Well, this is me thanking him, because oh my goodness, this layer is absolutely incredible. And you wouldn't think, right? They're both very different fragrances, their own distinct personalities, and it works. I don't know why it works, but it really works. So don't be afraid. Sometimes it's really unexpected. On that same page, I think it's also important to choose fragrances that do have their own individual characters. Actually, layering fragrances that don't have a lot of personality doesn't tend to work. You would think it would, that they would kind of like marry into each other and maybe build a personality, but not really. Again, you kind of get this like mush that we had when we layered a weak fragrance with a very strong one. It just kind of smells like a bunch of different materials. And the character, it just gets completely lost if there wasn't a strong character to begin with. So you definitely want to do this with your fragrances that do have a personality, that do have a strong, distinctive smell. That's not to say that fragrances that are more well-rounded don't work for layering. I just find it's easier to start with fragrances with character and to start by trying to figure out a good contrast. So like a bright citrus with a dark wood, a floral with something super ambery, this kind of thing. These kind of different fragrance families actually tend to work together really well sometimes. So now we've selected our fragrances. How do we do this? How do we start? So first of all, let us never layer for the first time before an important event or even just before work or hanging out with friends, because then we're gonna be stuck with this layer that we might really, really hate. I think anytime you're gonna try a new fragrance or a new fragrance layer for the first time, the best time to try things out is just before a shower, because if it's awful, you can wash it off, and if it's great, you can just reapply after your shower. So you have your bottles in front of you, and we're gonna take our arms and we're gonna do a spray right here, because if you've seen my video on fragrance application, you know I hate spraying on the wrist. So we're gonna first take our first fragrance and spray it here. With our second fragrance, we're gonna spray it inside the elbow. And these are just two spots where fragrances perform really well, and we're just gonna let the aroma of the two completely dry and kind of get close and let them waft at us and kind of get that combined aura. And because they're close enough, you know, if you're kind of smelling in between here, you're going to get the smell of the fragrance combined. So if that's pleasant, we move on then to spraying it on our body, and we'll spray our chest and our neck. Now, something that I don't like to do is spray or layer fragrances directly on top of each other. You can do this, I just feel like it minimizes the amount of layers that work. And this is also true if you have like a hair mist or something like that. I love spraying radically different fragrances, especially if one's just gonna go on my hair and one's just gonna go on my body. Back to body fragrances. Something else you can do is, let's say they are both similarly concentrated fragrances. And if you wanna learn more about fragrance concentration, I also have a video about that. But if they are similar, but let's say you do just want one to come out more than the other, it's the one that you love more, then spray your neck and your stomach with that one and then do the other one just on your chest. See how that works. If it's awful, you can shower and try different proportions the next day, or if it's great, you can wear it just like that. And what's nice is you can try, if you have kind of like two ideas, you have two arms, so you can try two different layers on two different arms, and then whichever one works out the best, you can spray on your body before you take a shower. So I really hope that this video helped you understand fragrance layering better. I hope it inspired you to try some layers of your own, or just gave you ideas on how to layer your fragrances better. Let me know how you layer your fragrances and what fragrances you like to layer. And also let me know if you'd be interested in a video on my favorite fragrance layers. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye everyone.